am pumpkin pleased to see all of you. Thank you so much for joining me as I make one of my favorite dishes. It's a pumpkin black bean chili, and I have pre-chopped a lot of this because I'm going to walk you through some of the important steps to making a really good chili and why we put things in a certain order. I'm also, as you can see, I'm cooking on induction heat right now, which is, it's good for the planet. So what's really cool about induction heat, I'm just turning this on now, and it heats up almost immediately. It gets hot quite fast. So we're gonna turn our ovens on, and like I said, I've pre-chopped a lot of the things for this recipe so that I can walk you through and kind of show you why we do things in the order that we're doing them. And you can find all of our recipes at foodliteracycenter.org/recipe. So again, we're making pumpkin black bean chili today, and chopped it. Now, for those of you who have picky eaters at home, the onion and the garlic are essential in a soup recipe. They provide so much necessary flavor. So what I would say to those of you who maybe have a picky eater, one thing my mom did when I was little, and I might have been a pickier eater than I am today, is she would chop the onion in really large pieces so that I could pick them out. That's one option. The other option is to go with onion powder and garlic powder. And the other is to, have your kids do the chopping with you, and hopefully they become food adventurers just by being exposed to that several times. So yeah, my pan is steaming hot already. You saw how quickly that got hot. So in my onions go. Woo! They're gonna go good. And why we want a hot pan is that when those onions hit that pan, we want them to immediately start to caramelize. That's that brownish color that you see come off of your food as it's cooking at a high heat. So we want a medium-high heat on this, not low, and we want them hitting that pan hot. And you can see that they have already begun to get a little bit of char on there, right? So that's what we want. We want them to get hot and begin to brown and caramelize. So at the same time as our onion, I have chopped my bell pepper the same size as the pieces of my onion because we want them to cook at the same time. And if they're the same size, you're gonna get the same sort of chew. So you're not gonna have some that are a little bit raw while some are cooked fully. So if you're cutting everything the same size, your onion and your bell pepper the same size, you're gonna get a very consistent mouthfeel when you go to eat those. So I'm stirring in. Again, I've got this at a pretty decent heat, medium high. And when I take this off, because it's induction, it turns off. And when I set it back down, that's what the beeping that you hear. And I'm even gonna turn this up a little bit because my bell peppers were in the fridge, so they're cold, so they're gonna bring the temperature of that pan down when I add them. So I'm gonna kick up my heat just a tiny bit because there's so much bell pepper in there, it's gonna affect the heat inside that pan, and I wanna keep it at that medium-high heat. So I'm gonna turn that up just a tiny bit. Beginning to hear that sizzle. When we cook, we're smelling things that are hitting our noses, and instantly, as soon as I let those onions and those peppers hit the pan, they instantly started to caramelize and cook. So I can smell that I've done it right. I can also hear with my ears that sizzle the minute they hit that pan. So that's how you know your pan is ready to go and at the right temperature. And if that sizzle begins to dissipate, I know that, again, like when I threw in those bell peppers, because they were cold, that sizzle wasn't quite at the same octave, so I knew I needed to turn my heat up. So we're listening, we're smelling, we're looking for those bite-sized pieces that are all the same size with our onion and our bell pepper. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let these just cook, caramelize. They're gonna begin to soften. So instead of being crunchy, they're gonna be that sort of softy soup, the texture that you put into a soup. And then my onions are gonna get a little bit translucent. So that's what we're looking for. Now, as far as our spices go, because that's one thing that we're going to add in here, hopefully you guys can see me through the steam. I should have done this recipe on Halloween. So one thing about our spices, you can throw them in at various times depending on what you're looking for in your spice. So for example, one of the ingredients in our recipe is cumin. And if I were using cumin seed instead of ground cumin, I would want to throw those seeds in right now because they're hard and they're not soft. You know, with a ground cumin, it's a soft powder, but with a seed, you need to get it softened, and then that flavor will sort of come out into your food. So we need to think about which spices we want to add when. So let's think about our harder, firmer spices that we're going to be using. One of the spices that we're using is oregano, dried oregano. I have this from my garden that I grow, and then I pick it off, I let it dry, and I pick it off the stems. So oregano, it's pretty dry and firm. So what I do is I take some of those dry leaves and I crush them in my hand. I'm just kind of rolling and crushing with my fingertips because that's going to bring out a lot of the flavor. Now I'm getting, things are cooking really good, so I'm going to lower my temperature. Smells so good in here. Those onions and those peppers are cooking right down. So this oregano, when I pinch it between my fingers, I'm releasing a lot of the flavor, and I'm also making this, by putting it in early, it's going to begin to kind of soften and add that flavor into my cooking onions and my cooking bell pepper. So these are looking really good. I'm going to show them to you. There's so much steam, hopefully you can see. But well, actually I'll take a scoop out to show you so that you can see it better. But basically the onion is pretty translucent at this point, and the peppers have cooked down, so they're still chewy. They're not mushy. We still want a bite to them, but they are also not they're not crunchy crisp. So we want them chewy without being mushy. So that's about the tone we've hit right now. So I've added my oregano. Another of the early spices that you could throw in is your black pepper. If you throw some of your spices in, they will begin to cook because you've got this dry, hot pan. And so you don't want to roast certain things, like our chili powders. They're very delicate, and if you put those in too early, you'll actually begin to roast them and you can burn them. So we want to be careful about the timing, like I said, of what we're putting in when. So we've got it cooked, so I'm going to lower the temperature because at this point, I just want everything to slow cook. I wanted to fast cook those peppers and onions to get that caramelized flavor onto them. Now I'm lowering that temperature and we're going to slow cook everything else. So we want to, again, you can add some of your spices now, like the black pepper, the oregano I'm going to add, but the rest, we're actually going to give it a minute and put in some of the wet ingredients. I'm also going to add my garlic now. You can add this at any point now. The reason we're not adding garlic earlier is that it's so tiny, right? And again, it is not the same size pieces that we cut our onion and our pepper into. So we want to be careful about not adding the garlic in the very beginning, or the garlic is going to become mush and it's going to lose a lot of its flavor. So I'm putting it in now. It'll get a little bit cooked in the hot heat, but I'm going to begin to add our liquids. It's going to bring the temperature down, and now everything is just sort of going to slowly have its flavors pulled out into that broth. So we're going to add a whole lot of tomato sauce. Our recipe calls for both a combination of tomato sauce and diced tomatoes. We have a really large can of tomato sauce here at work. So we are just gonna use just tomato sauce. And the only difference is you're gonna have a smoother, creamier chili as opposed to one with more chunks of tomato. And you can see that steam is going away. The heat is kind of come down right away as I add this wet ingredient. The volume, the amount that I'm putting in here is quite high, so it's bringing the temperature of my chili down pretty quickly. And I'm gonna lower it even further. So at this point, we're just cooking on low, and we're gonna leave it on low for the rest of the time. And the other fun part about this stage is you may have had some brown bits in the bottom of your pan, some of those caramelized pieces of, you know, the ends of onion or something, and those will actually get, as you drag your wooden spoon across here, those brown bits are gonna get right into the sauce, which is what we want, because it adds all kinds of yummy flavor. So now we've got our tomato sauce. Now we can add things in just about any order that we want, because again, we've dropped that temperature. It's just gonna slowly simmer and cook. So I've added my tomato sauce. I'm gonna add black beans, already cooked black beans. You can use canned, you can use a pot that you've brewed on your stovetop yourself. And you do not need to drain them, because that liquid is actually really great stuff. So we're gonna put the beans and their liquid right into our pot. And you can use black beans, pinto beans, heirloom beans, whatever your favorite bean is, that's the bean that you should put in this chili. I enjoy black beans in my chili, but I've used every type of bean under the sun. And there's no wrong bean when it comes to chili. You can use a combination of 2 or 3 kinds of beans. So we've got beans in here. Now we need to get our spices going. So as soon as you put these spices in, you're gonna start to see this turn from tomato soup into chili. So we have chili powder. That is the main ingredient in chili. And you can buy chili powder, you know, that says chili powder at the store. However, what I like to do with my chilies is I like to buy a variety of dried chili powders. They're not called chili powders, they're called by the name of each chili that is contained in them. So this particular one, and they're literally just the type of pepper that is listed, and they've been dried and ground into a powder. So this one, for example, is chili pasilla. That's a type of pepper. You've probably seen these in your grocery store. This one is a New Mexican chili powder. Well, you can read these. This is an ancho chili powder. You can read. It's hard. And then this is chili molida. So I like to grab these types of spices when I'm out and about at different grocery stores. When I'm traveling, I like to find different chilies, and before I use any of them, I taste them, because some are gonna have more heat, some are gonna be sweeter, some are gonna be smokier, and depending on what flavor I'm in the mood for, I'm gonna grab those different chilies. So I highly recommend using some of these fun ones. I've already got this open, so I'm gonna go ahead and use our chili powder, but you really cannot go wrong when it comes to chili powders. So, and I like to put quite a bit. If you like less heat, use less. If you like more heat, use more. That's kind of the rule in cooking. So I'm gonna start adding all of our spices now. So I've got our chili powder in there. Then same thing with paprika. There's different varieties of paprika. Some folks really enjoy smoked paprika. We have that. And you get that kind of like campfire smoky smell on top of the sweet pepper. So that tastes really good in a chili, but for some people it's a little bit too much of a flavor. It's kind of similar to a chipotle where the chili has been smoked. So add some of that if that floats your boat. The other that I really like is Aleppo paprika, and that's from Turkey, and it is spicy and sweet. I think it adds a really fun flavor to chili. Again, you're gonna use as much or as little as you have the palate for. And again, always make sure to taste. It's sweet. It's so good. You can also use crushed red chilies, the kind that are just kind of all hot, and they don't really change the flavor, but they're going to change the heat factor. And again, put those on your tongue before you put them in your chili to see if it's one that you approve of, right? Very necessary ingredient is our cumin. We need at least a good couple of teaspoons of cumin to get that chili flavor. It's not gonna taste like chili if you don't have cumin. So I like to use at least 2 teaspoons of cumin. So we've got a lot of our spices in there now. So I'm gonna stir those in. Yeah, as soon as I added that cumin, now it smells like chili. It's so important. And this is a fun trick that you can use if you have leftover, say, spaghetti or marinara sauce. You can actually turn it into something that has more of a chili flavor by just adding a little bit of the chili powder and cumin. And you'll suddenly take your marinara sauce from one side of the world's cuisine to the other. So it's really fun. Okay, and then the other secret ingredient, I think I've used all of our spices. The other secret ingredient to this particular chili is pumpkin. And I actually just stumbled upon this one day because I was making a chili, and I actually usually thicken my chili a little bit, often with tomato paste. And I was out, but it was holiday season, so I had tons of cans of pumpkin. And, you know, it's pretty much the same very thick consistency of thickener. And I thought, I wonder what that's gonna do to the flavor, because it's a little bit sweet. But it actually pairs so nicely with your beans. It pairs really nicely with chili powder and with cumin. So I highly recommend it, and now this is how I make my chili. I almost always add pumpkin to it. So if you have canned pumpkin, use canned. I already have my pumpkin puree made, so I'm gonna use about 2 cups of that, give or take. And, you know, it just depends on how thick you want your chili. And if you find that it's a little bit too sweet with the pumpkin, then, you know, add more cumin. But I don't personally find that it makes my chili sweet. I really like it. This is also another good time to mention, like, I like to put frozen corn in my chili. I think also it goes really well with all the other flavors to have that little pop of crunch in my food. So I do recommend also, this would be the stage at which you might add something like corn. You wouldn't add it any earlier because it would sort of disintegrate and get too hot, but you could add it right now where you're basically just sort of letting everything simmer and warm up and become, basically this is the kind of dish where if you put it in your refrigerator and eat it as leftovers all week long, it's just gonna get tastier and tastier as those spices settle in, and there's just no bad time to eat leftover chili. So, sorry, I just need a sip of water. So here we go. I'm gonna give this a taste. I'm gonna scoop out. I would personally let this simmer longer, but you know, we're on TV, so I'm gonna speed things up and give it a taste already. And I would have been tasting this as I cook. That's another good rule of cooking. Taste as you go, that way you know if you need more cumin or if you need a little more salt. And you'll notice I did not add salt to mine because our canned tomato sauce already has, in my opinion, plenty of salt. It does not need any more. And also if you're using a canned bean, you're probably also getting a lot of salt. So I personally almost never need any additional salt when I'm making this. So here I go. Oh man, even without all the simmering, it's absolutely delicious. So many flavors that go so well together. A little bit of kick, a little bit of heat. It's the perfect fall dish. Oh, and I forgot. You can also use a couple of pumpkin seeds as a garnish because we like to make things pretty, and it's pumpkin chili. So here you go. Here's your beauty shot. I hope that you enjoyed cooking along with us. Please go to foodliteracycenter.org/recipes. You can also click the little orange donate button to ensure that programs like these are given to kids in the Sacramento area so that they can fall in love with vegetables to protect their health. Thank you so much for watching and enjoy your pumpkin black bean chili.